And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
It was 1776 when the founders signed the writ of independence from the Brits. It was revolution.
Tonight's featured show is Connecting the Dots with Dan Happel. Welcome to the Republic News Network for our live national broadcast. You may call me Kelby, and tonight I'm going to be acting as your moderator. The RNN, which stands for the Republic News Network, has been doing this radio show since 2010, and it's always been a friendly introduction for the people of the United States Corporation. Here we go. It's true. The United States is a federal corporation, and their exclusive jurisdiction is in the District of Columbia. The Republic government was simply a bunch of U.S. citizens that in law don't have access to the Bill of Rights, and they realized they wanted to be Americans as our founders and our law provided each and every one of us. See, we've been hard at work since 2008, and since 2010 we have successfully re-inhabited the original government vacated under Lincoln in 1861. I know, it's hard to understand. Don't worry. We are law-abiding, peaceful Americans and very pro-government, and we love our country. You can consider the Republic members are tired of the corruption that we see every day. See, we found in the law that there is two forms of government here on the land, and we did something about it. We are people. Mothers, fathers, sons, daughters. We have families just like you. We simply found some truths, and now we're sharing these important truths with the rest of the world. So get ready to hear things that sound amazing, and get ready to understand that you too are about to be a part of history. We welcome each one of you to Connecting the Dots with Dan Happel and your Republic if you so choose. But before we go into our broadcast tonight, please bow your head in prayer. Thank you, Lord, for this show. Thank you, Lord, for people that are willing to stand up and tell the truth. Father God, we ask that you bless this call. You bless the people that are on the call, teaching information that most people just wouldn't say. And Lord, literally risking their lives. Just cover them with your angels. Cover their life, cover their family, cover their domains. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Dan, I yield.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to another program of Connecting the Dots. And tonight we are having a couple of guests on our program that I think are very, very important to understanding what is happening in the western United States, what's happening to our rural ranching and farming communities. And tonight's program will be a discussion about the death of Lavoy Finicum at the so-called traffic stop in just outside of Burns, Oregon, and how that whole event came to be, and also inside information from someone who was riding in the vehicle and actually saw the entire thing happen, and not only saw it, but actually filmed the entire event on her cell phone camera. And the evidence is pretty overwhelming that it isn't quite what was advertised by the federal government. But with that said, I'd like to introduce our guest for today's program. Brand Thornton is a gentleman that we had on last week. Brand has been involved in this conflict for a very long period of time. He's been involved with the Bundy, Bunkerville, the standoff there, and then later in Oregon with the Malheur Wildlife Refuge. But the lady who is on with Brand, who is really very knowledgeable about this whole thing, is Shawna Cox. And Shawna has actually been involved even before Bunkerville happened. She was one of the founders of the Utah-Arizona Tea Party, and she was actually knew the Bundy family before the events that happened outside of Bunkerville. and has quite a long history and story about how much of this stuff happened. So with that, I'd like to start the conversation by Shawna, would you like to give us a little bit of your background? I would also ask Brand to do the same thing. He was on last week, but maybe didn't have quite as good an opportunity to talk about some of his experiences we would have liked, so we're going to do it tonight. So, Shawna, would you kind of tell us a little bit about your background and how you first became involved with this whole situation?
Oh, sure, I'd love to. I became aware of things that were happening because of, in our community, we had a monument that was being placed upon us. The Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument was brought into, signed into a monument by President Clinton at that time, and I was really involved with that. And so that's kind of when I very first met Cliven, because he came over to help us, and we had formed some committees and things to help stand up, trying to fight the federal government from taking over our homes and our land and our ranches and our roads. So I've been totally involved in that for years. When Cliven had his problems, then I had a tea party organized, and he called to have us come and help him there. It actually started about 2 years before that. They were going to come and try to take away his cattle and take over his ranch. And we were able to stop that just after midnight, before 6 o'clock the next morning. And then 2 years, almost to the day, they did it again. So that was my first experience with this. And I have a lot of children, and have been really involved in my community and the schools, and so I was really aware of things that were happening, and I just knew that we had to stop this tyrannical government. That was what was really scaring us. And so I went out to the ranch when Cliven called me just to check things out and see what we could do to help, and that's where my story began with him.
Okay, good. Did when you got started with this problem with the Escalante National,
the Grand Staircase, yes, the Grand Staircase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was a lot of the ranch lands and a lot of the stuff in that area was really involved in that in a way that a lot of people are not aware of. Can you kind of give a really quick background on how it affected ranching and so forth, and then maybe we can talk quickly about the Bundy situation, because I know there were a bunch of ranchers in that area that had been put out of business and literally lost all their grazing rights, and Cliven was the last guy in the area that was standing up, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct. In Utah, just as you cross the border from the Arizona into the Utah border, my friend Mary Rucker was the one that was the first rancher there, and they went after her mercilessly, trying to take all the ranchers out, and they would go after them one at a time. And she had been widowed less than a year, and I think they thought she was an easy takedown, but she's a little fighter, and she was not going to give up easily. And they did everything they could, and they were using the BLM, and they were working together with the environmental groups, and the environmental group that was working with them was the Grand Staircase, was the Grand Canyon Trust Company. And I didn't even understand who they were at that time. But as it developed, we saw how they were manipulating with the politicians to get people off the land, and that's when I learned about Agenda 21. And that was a major eye-opening to me of what their agenda was. And from there, I just knew what they were happening, because as each rancher, they would try to take them out. And I was able to get them, the other ranchers, engaged, because helping them to understand, that's why we created the Tea Party, was helping them to understand what the dangers were of them becoming individually persecuted and prosecuted, so that they would lose all of their rights. So during that same period of time, they were hammering on the ones there in Clark County. And they did take out, since the 70s they've been working on them, but they did take out in 1993, they began to change their contracts with the people, with the ranchers. And in Clark County, eventually it took them a few years, but they were able to there was 52 ranchers, and every one of them are at 53, including Cliven. And all 52 of the others were put out of business because of the restrictions and regulations that the BLM placed upon them and had them sign in these contracts. Cliven and his friend, Keith Ney, who was also a rancher there, were understanding what the problem was, and decided that they needed to not sign the contract. If they didn't sign the contract, they were under no obligation to allow the BLM to restrict them and their use of their rights, of water rights and their land and the forage. So they got the picture, and they understood, and they were trying to educate others. And that's when they came and also tried to help educate us. But when he got in trouble, Mr. Ney had already passed away, and Cliven was kind of standing on his own, and he was begging for help. And that's where that began. And at the Bundy Ranch, when I got there, Cliven had never left his ranch. He was restricted from entering any of the public land by a federal judge. And that judge sent an enforcement. I call them a federal army of BLM people. There was Park Service, Forest Service, and hired mercenaries in that group. And they came onto the state public land and put up closed signs to keep all the public off. They set up corrals and called them free speech areas. And you know, you well know as well as I do that free speech is not an area.
Right, exactly. Well, I know that this is a good background so that we can kind of fit how Lavoy Finicum came to be part of that group, because it's my understanding that Lavoy was also one of 3 ranchers that were really standing up and saying enough is enough.
Right. And he learned that from Cliven's ranch. When he came out and Cliven asked for help, Lavoy showed up with his horse. He knew his eyes were beginning to open, and he understood what was at risk. And the more he studied, the stronger he became. He was really convicted, and it was a learning process. But he got it, and he was willing to make the stand.
Well, I kind of I watched a couple of videos with Lavoy talking in there. I also read his book, and it was pretty easy for me to understand why he would represent a threat to bureaucrats in the various land agencies. And incidentally, your comment about 1993, it's interesting because that is the same year that President Clinton started initiating a lot of the so-called sustainability aspects of UN Agenda 21. And UN Agenda 21 had come into being only the year before, and it had been signed by the president, not signed into law, but signed by President George Herbert Walker Bush, who was president at the Rio Summit that initiated UN Agenda 21. So there's a lot going on in this time frame. In the early 90s, is when we really started to see them turn the pressure up on a lot of this stuff. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So let's move fast forward a little bit. And Brand, I'd like to maybe get you into the conversation as well. But let's fast forward to the Malheur area.
The Malheur?
Yeah, exactly. And talk about that and how that whole thing came into play, and how there wasn't any intention by the ranchers that were occupying Ammon, any of the other ranchers there, to create any kind of a violent scenario. It was a very peaceful protest, and I'd like you to kind of talk about that, Brand, and also Shawna, if you would, please.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I'm one of the original, I hate to use the word occupiers, but I was one of the original occupiers that went into the refuge. That particular day we had the protest, and I was in the Safeway parking lot, and I got a message that I was to go to a meeting, and there's right there next to the parking lot was a little cafe, and I went in there, and I heard the idea that Ammon had, and it sounded really good to me. And so I decided to be involved with that. And so we took off during the protest, during the middle of the protest. A certain bunch of it took off in a caravan. We headed out to the refuge, and when we got there, there was nobody there, and the doors were open, and the lights were on, and the heat was on, and we just went in and had a peaceful assembly, and the whole idea was just to bring attention to these land issues, and especially Dwight and Stephen Hammond and what had taken place with them, the egregious laws that had been broken with them. And it was a very short time after that. We had all kinds of news media out there, and it was amazing the number of people that we had out there. We literally ended up having a few thousand people, primarily ranchers, that came out, and there was a teaching program put on by Ammon and Ryan and even Shawna there and some others, educating them to their rights and what has been taking place over the years as far as the abuses with that the Malheur Refuge there, and because there used to be something like 130 ranchers there that had been displaced to form this refuge. Now you stop and think of 130 ranchers. How many people per ranch in each ranch? You're looking at, I would say, at least 5 people. So you're pushing 500 to 1,000 people that had their rights taken away, had their lives destroyed, had been displaced, and whatever happened to those people? Whatever happened to their descendants? Well, that was one of the plans, that Shawna was actually heavily involved with, is unraveling what had happened to these people and their property, and trying to bring them back and give them the opportunity to make claims on those properties that had been stolen from them. And so that was the whole idea. It was very, very peaceful. We went out of our way to make sure everybody understood it was peaceful. Everybody was welcome. Like I said, we had literally a few thousand people come through there, and every media outlet, even the ones that lied to their teeth, we allowed to go down and to interview people. Transparency, we couldn't have done a better job. It's like Ammon's always said, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and we wanted to be transparent. We were transparent, and we were peaceful.
Well, I think that's, I grew up in a ranching and farming community and in that environment, and I, frankly, seeing the Bundys, the Hammonds, they remind me so much of people that were and still are my neighbors. And these aren't people that are violent, nasty people, but they are people that after a while you can push them so far, you can push them up against the wall, and sooner or later you're going to have somebody that's going to start fighting back. And the way these guys were fighting back was trying to do it legally by understanding that the Constitution and our law system was being violated by the very people that are supposed to be protecting and defending those rights.
Absolutely.
You're so right. These ranchers, you know, anytime you think that a rancher stands up to fight about anything, they're land people. They are peaceful. They're hard workers. They work from sunup to sundown, and they don't get involved in those types of things very often. So when you have a bunch of ranchers that are really protesting something, it must be major. People should pay attention to those things because they're not those type of people. They are really hardworking people. They work daylight to dark, and then they're tired. They sleep through the night, you know.
Well, and the thing is most of those same people, those same families, are the first ones to come to the help or the aid of anybody that needs, that has an emergency or has any kind of a family emergency. They're the first ones to be there to try to help, and that's
absolutely
always been the case. Always been the case.
And
so
another thing
anyway,
too,
let's talk about the refuge and the some of the folks that were there, because this thing started off very definitely as a very peaceful, just a protest against the which obviously to me looked like double jeopardy of the Hammond family, the fact that they had served time and then someone else came in, another judge came in and completely changed the original verdict to be something totally different, and to add 4.5 or 4 years to their prison sentences, and frankly, they shouldn't have been there in the first place. So I guess that's a little editorializing on my part, but tell us about how the came in from outside of the group that was there, that were brought in by the FBI and various law enforcement agencies, how they came into the picture and how they really tried to create a lot more strife and militarization than the ranchers really wanted.
Well, we still don't know who they all were. But you know, at one time, there was 15 informants there out of, say, 40 people. So, you know, they had a strong influence in trying to shape the narrative there. And, you know, as agent provocateurs, I've seen a few of them when I first got there. They're the ones that broke into one of the buildings and ransacked the safe, and they tried to set Hammond up with that whole thing. And then, of course, you know, we found out about the others, Terry Linnell and Fabio Menaggio, who went by the name of John Kilman. And John Kilman, he was, I believe, more than just teaching and training and shooting and carrying on these shooting events, but I think he also brought a lot of the firearms out. Now, and towards the end of that whole thing, they had these two Navy SEAL people that came in, and they kicked in some of the doors, and I am absolutely convinced that they brought in the 30-something firearms that was paraded before the jury up in the court up there in Oregon. Now, if anybody looks at those pictures of those firearms, and they know anything about firearms, those are primarily Woodstock SKS rifles. Now, I was up there at that refuge and got to meet everybody pretty much, you know, daily. And all the time I was there, I did not see one of those firearms there. Those were obviously brought in, and I'm going to say brought in by Fabio Menaggio, and also the two other agent provocateurs who came in claiming that they were Navy SEALs. So here you go. You know, they tainted this whole thing. You know, if it's a conspiracy, well, they played a big major part of that conspiracy. In fact, they're the only ones that were conspiring against anybody, was them and the federal government. So that's a big, you know, I hope I outline, you know, closely what you're looking for as far as those informants are.
Well, here, let me tell you. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say that if, first of all, ranchers I never met a rancher in my life that would have an SKS. If in fact ranchers brought in firearms, it would be Remington, Winchester, Savage. They may bring in an AR, but it certainly wouldn't be an SKS.
No, there were no illegal guns on there. But one of the things that I wanted to say was we are learning who these undercover agents were. We're getting a pretty good handle on it. But the thing is it's sad because there was never an intent to do anything evil. And so we wanted everybody to come, and we invited them. We went out into the public and invited them to come and made friends with people, and that's why they came down, and they brought food, and they knew that there was peace and loving there, and that we were there to help them, and it began to get bigger and bigger. And then after we were arrested is when I finally found out, well, I knew a lot of things that were happening because of the records that we were able to, let's see, what we saw, okay? So anyway, because of the things that we found there and the persecutions of these ranchers, we kind of were able to go back to where this tyranny is coming from. I have to call it tyranny because it really is. It's a conspiracy against American people. And it was really upsetting to me to discover that the same judge that Bill Clinton appointed to in place of Judge Hogan, who originally had sentenced the Hammonds to go to prison, and then he appoints this other one, Ann Aiken. She is the one that has financial interest in the Malheur. She has two sons that are on the Friends of the Malheur board who were out there protesting against us. They were raising money for the Malheur for every single day that we were there. So there's a lot of people that are financially have a lot to gain because of the Malheur itself and the minerals that are on it. And that's what was so, and she seems to be, I mean, not seems to be, she was the same one who indicted us at the federal prison when we were arrested originally.
You know, that's an interesting thing that I really want to get into is what exactly were the charges of the defendants at the trial in Oregon? What were actually the charges, and what charges are still out there?
Well, we all were charged with the same thing. The original charge, which we didn't know, by the way, when they arrested us, there was no warrant. It took them hours to figure out what they were going to charge us with, and the charges came out to conspiracy to impede a federal officer by force, threat, and intimidation. And I looked at them and said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I never even saw any officer till after they shot at me. I had no idea. How would we impede them?" And none of the other people, I don't even understand what they were talking about, but that was the closest thing they could come up with that could be a federal crime is conspiracy. And anybody who speaks to each other that, you know, that could commit a crime would be a conspiracy. So any two people can conspire, and then it was like everybody else could join at any time, would be part of that conspiracy, and it's so broad that you could charge anybody with anything and try to make it stick, and that's what they were trying to do. And even the second go-round is the same.
And even
if you didn't even know about it, right.
Yeah.
So we were really being tried terribly for an outrageous kind of a charge, but that's the only way they could get us into a federal court. And they're still trying to push that with this second go-round, but they've now changed the charges as of today, I learned. that they have changed. They didn't change the charge. The charges are still the same. They just added a bunch more misdemeanors to those, say, the last 7 people. But because they couldn't push the conspiracy charge, because we were all, found not guilty of that, which, by the way, if you have 12 people find you not guilty, then it means we're innocent. There's a big difference between that, and people need to understand that there's a difference between being not guilty and innocent, and they have no jurisdiction over us that way. So what happens is, but they have found one man that they're trying to throw a whole bunch of federal charges against, which are terribly not founded. And we have to take that down. So one of the guys there, they're trying to throw everything at now because they didn't get Ammon and Ryan or those guys. So we still have a battle.
The one that they're working on now that they're trying to take down. The one
that's Dwayne Emmer.
Okay.
He is honorably discharged from the Marines, and it's a very sad deal. But
he was the one that was riding the horse, Hellboy, and carrying American flag. Pretty much daily when we were there. Let me say something about conspiracy charges. You got to go through a lot of mental gymnastics to be able to make that stick. And basically all it is thought control. Now, for them to continue this conspiracy charge, in my opinion, very strong opinion, this is double jeopardy. Because, this trial, even though it was broken up into 2 trials, it was basically the same trial, all right? Now, the jury has come back and said not guilty on conspiracy, and yet they're going to charge 7 more people with that same crime. That is double jeopardy. In my opinion, that is double jeopardy. It's already been adjudicated, and for them to bring it back just shows just how dishonest and disgraceful this judge and these prosecutors are.
Well, it kind of sounds to me like they're going to continue to try to do this. And it's been the case a lot of times in federal courts. If they don't like the outcome of the first trial, they'll try to figure out a way to continue it so that they can get a new jury. And they figure if they do it enough times that eventually they'll come up with a jury that votes the way they like.
And this jury pool that they're drawing from has already been tainted, all right? Because you have the district attorney out there. You have I forget all the people, but Kate Brown and others have come out and spoken how disappointed they were with that verdict. Okay, that's been all over the news. And they have, prejudice. They have prejudice in the jury pool as we now speak. And so, how are these men, going to be able to get a free trial when? And it's a very liberal state in the first place. And a lot of people were upset with the 12 jurors. In fact, the media outlet wanted their names put out there. Well, I know why they wanted to put them out there. They wanted to give them tarred and feathered. So now look what's happening. You're going to bring in some other people from a very liberal state that know that the politicians and the judges and the prosecuting attorneys are all very upset. That is, they're not going to get a free trial. I just don't see it.
Well, let's hope that the new administration puts an end to this, and that's a hope that I have, because this whole thing is a travesty. But let's get on to the convoy and the travel from the refuge there, and how that was all put together, and the timing and the vehicles and so forth. And then let's talk about how ultimately, Shawna, you were in the vehicle that Lavoy was driving, and I've seen the video of that entire thing, and it's very compelling. And I would suggest that our listeners go to our website, where we've got our We call it our billboard and descriptor for this week's show. And at the bottom of my description of what we're talking about, there's a video that's called Lavoy Assassination Forensic Proof. I suggest that our listeners go to that site and click on that video. It's about an hour long, but it's incredibly compelling. And Shawna, would you like to kind of talk about how, first of all, how this convoy, what you were doing with the convoy, why you were going to meet with the sheriff, and how this whole thing was put together, and then we'll start talking about the events that led to the shooting death of Lavoy Finicum.
Oh, sure, I'd be happy to. The meeting came about because there was a rancher. Well, I don't know if he's a rancher, but one of the men over in John Day, he lives in Grant County, and he had been burned out. His timber had been destroyed, and it's all from these fires that this BLM sets in. They don't help put them out. And his home had been destroyed, and he was really one of those sad tales that needed help. And he wanted us to come to Grant County. And he knew, and we knew, that their sheriff was a constitutional sheriff, and that he was there to help protect the citizens. They asked us to come, and he actually set up the meeting, and we were going to, the truth is I wasn't going to be there, because we never always went together to any meetings. There were different people. We all had different things that we were volunteered to do. But the Sharp family was going to go sing, and that was the women with all the young children, and they're gospel singers. So when they set the meeting up that day, it was set up that they would travel in a convoy, but it would be separated so that if anything would happen to one, that the other one would be 10 minutes behind, just for safety purposes. So they set out, and the Committee of Safety from Harney County left first in their vehicles, and then we had the ranchers out of Wyoming that were going to go, and I think there were some legislators, and then we had the Sharp family with all her children in the van, and they went 10 minutes later, and then it was Lavoy's truck, and then it was supposed to be a reporter, a media man that was going, and then we had Ammon in the Jeep, and that's how it's supposed to go down. At the end, it didn't work out quite like that. When it was time for the Sharp family to leave, they were a little bit behind because they had all these children that were, getting ready, but they weren't quite ready. And so I went over to help them get ready. And there was another person that was supposed to go and videotape the family and the meeting. It was David, and he wasn't there. And I was trying to hurry and get those kids into that van and get them out. And so the little guy wasn't with us. He had gone down to the bunkhouse, and somebody ran and got him, and the older daughter who had just showed up the night before, Victoria, she's 18, and she was still in the shower. So they had to leave her because Mark McConnell was trying to get them to hurry up and get out of there. He gassed them up. He was yelling at them, and it really upset the family because he was swearing, and the mom was upset about that. And so they took off without Victoria. So the next vehicle to leave was Lavoy's, and she jumped in the back seat with him, and I jumped in right behind her because we couldn't find David when the 10 minutes was up and we were trying to get out. So I just put all my stuff in my car, locked it, and jumped in the car and brought my camera. And that's what I used to record that with. And that's when we were ambushed about 30 minutes later on the highway. And I pulled out my camera and videotaped it.
So
I lost weight.
Do you think that Lavoy and Ammon were going to be specifically targeted? I know that Mark McConnell was in the vehicle that Ammon was in, and he is later been identified as one of the operatives for the FBI that was part of their inside people. So do you by the way this whole thing happened, everybody got through except the last two vehicles. Well, it would have been three if the reporter had been on board and been ready to go. But the last two vehicles are the ones that really got, I guess, stopped and the whole thing was set up for. Am I right on that?
You are. The last vehicle did come, and we were stopped in between. They weren't. He wasn't stopped. I mean, he was, because the roadblock was there by then. They had blocked the road. And yes, we knew that somebody had to have informed them when we came, because they knew exactly, and the timing was so perfect as when to come, and to have McConnell right behind us was not supposed to be that way, and it did. So they knew when we were coming. The only thing they didn't know was that Victoria and I were in that vehicle. So I honestly believe that they had intention to kill everybody there. That they had no warrant, they had no idea we were there, and that we kind of disrupted their whole scheme, and that's why everything went awry. We've kind of thrown the monkey wrench in, and that, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm going to tell you that the Lord put us there, and for this very purpose, was to preserve them from being murdered. Sure.
Now, let's kind of let's reconstruct the whole convoy, and at least from your vehicle and Ammon Bundy with McConnell in the vehicle behind. Let's reconstruct exactly how that whole thing came about. You came around, or Lavoy was driving the vehicle, came around a corner, and that's roughly the first time that you saw any kind of a roadblock ahead. And from what I saw of the forensic film, it was difficult to identify it as a roadblock until you almost completely around that curve to see over the snowbank and to see that there actually was a roadblock ahead. And according to the forensics on that, and they have pictures of the taillights coming on in the vehicle, Lavoy was hitting the brakes from right from the time that he saw the roadblock in place, which was some 450 or 500 feet away. Can you kind of lead through that and how the shots were fired at your vehicle? I could see all that happening in the film, but I'd like you to kind of talk about it and how all that came down.
Well, yes, I can talk about it. To some extent, we still have a lawsuit pending, so I don't know that I could go into every detail. But let me tell you, from where I was sitting, I could not see everything because I had my hand up with my camera, and I could not see into the back of my camera. I couldn't see the lens. So I didn't even know everything that it recorded. But I do know when the bullets started flying as they hit the truck, and we got down, I mean, we were already down, but, and Lavoy said that there's a roadblock. Now, we had just come around, we were just making a curve at that time. So he said there's a roadblock, and then immediately he swings to the left. And at that point, it puts my window directly at the roadblock, so I could see them right in my window. Mm-hmm. And then as we came around and hit into that snow, we went just a little ways, and then at High Center just stopped right there. And then you'll see everything that took place from there. But everything that I actually saw was was not what was in my camera, because I was holding the camera the whole time up in the air, even though I slouched down. So I had a different perspective from the area I was watching to everything that was on my camera.
Okay. Well, that's fair, and that's a real honest assessment. I do know that it was pretty obvious, and there was so little time between when that first shot was fired and ultimately the vehicle ended up stopped and stuck in the snowbank on the side of the road. But there were shots fired quite a ways away when that first shot was fired, and it seemed like every time that a shot was fired, Lavoy would lift his foot off the brake just as a reflex, but that he was really trying to brake and slow down and get and stop before the roadblock. And tell me just kind of the feeling in the vehicle. Did you guys think they were trying to kill you at the time?
Well, here's what nobody sees, because I didn't turn the camera on until after the first stop. When they stopped us the first time is when they opened fire first at Ryan Payne. Well, I don't know if they knew it was Ryan Payne, but whatever. We stopped, and he threw his arms out the window with both hands open, and immediately I saw a laser, and I heard the bullet hit, and he jumped back in. And so they were shooting at us before I even turned on the camera.
Wow. Okay.
And then he jumps out. So none of this other stuff happened until after that started. Then's when I said our best defense is our cameras, because I learned that at the Bundy Ranch, and I reached down and picked up my camera and turned it on. It wasn't my cell phone, because I was trying to make calls out for help with my cell phone. So I had my camera running. Yes.
Okay.
And
let me say something real quick. I talked to Ariel at the Lavoy funeral. Now, Ariel is Ryan Payne's girlfriend, okay? And she told me that Ryan had told her that he would have been shot, but the laser hit him in the eye, and that's why he jumped back just before the bullet hit. Now, it hit above his hands by the mirror, and that would have been real close where his head was, okay? So they were trying, now, it was supposed to be a non-lethal bullet. Well, you shoot somebody in the head with a non-lethal bullet, and I don't know if it was non-lethal or not, but if you shoot him in the head, there's a good chance you're going to kill him. I just wanted to interject that.
If you hit anybody with in the eye with virtually anything, that's straight to the brain.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anyway, so
go ahead, Shawna, and kind of fill us in then. So that first stop, how far did that occur from the actual roadblock? Was that a mile or two back?
It was about 1 mile, just barely over a mile. I know that we were doing at least 60 miles an hour because we were trying to hurry up and get to the sheriff. And so I know we were doing at least 60. And then as he came around that corner, because he didn't have time to slow down before those bullets started flying. He was just barely braking to make the corner, just barely, but he was, hurrying to get there, and that's when he saw the roadblock. There was no time for him to stop anyway. And then as they stopped us, then that's when the bullets continued. You'll hear that in my video, and the bullets continued to fly. There was no way for us to get out. They had actually shot, and you can't see that, but you can hear all this stuff that's happening. And the windows are breaking, and the first shots come through, and immediately I see lasers every place.
Right.
Well, we all do. And Lavoy's running through the snow, of course, and well, I don't know how you can run through 3.5 to 4 feet of snow, but he's trying to, okay, and to draw the fire away. But we have Ryan, who is shot. He doesn't say anything right off the bat, but in a minute he says he's shot. But I was trying to protect people because of the laser. I was worried about Victoria, number one, and I was I can see the laser on her leg, on her knee. I mean, all over the place. And so I'm pushing their legs. I'm shoving his head down because I could see it on his hat. I was really worried because I could just picture in my mind what was going to happen, you know, because I just heard the bullet hit the mirror right after the laser. So I don't know when they're going to pull that trigger. But I'm really ticked off because as they break the window and these other things, and, you know, the glass is flying, we don't know what's happening on the outside as much. I mean, we're trying to. You can hear my camera, definitely, and you can hear the shots. When they said there wasn't all those shots, you know, 3 shots, 6 shots, whatever they were saying, that is not true. That is absolutely not true. Yeah. And so
you can hear them. And the other thing that you can see, not to interrupt you, but the thing that you can see on the video is that in spite of the fact that they said they were talking the whole time, telling you, the occupants of the vehicle, to get out with your hands up and all that, there was none of that going on. They were shooting, and they weren't trying to get anyone out of the vehicle.
That's how we know that we knew for sure they were trying to kill us all. We knew that. But the bullets that were hitting the window by my head were just bouncing off. And I'm telling you, I was just praying and praying. And that's what was amazing to me, is because I felt like the Lord was just protecting me in that window. And every time I had hit, I just knew, you know, that he was deflecting them. It was because they were breaking out all the windows, and then they started shooting in all the gas, all the, I don't know if it's pepper spray, OC gas, whatever the heck it is. All we know is it was just coming in, you know, like crazy. So definitely in my heart, and both of us, we knew, and all of us, we knew that they were trying to kill us. It didn't have anything to do with trying to let us get out or help us get out or anything. There was nothing, and it went on for a long time. So
and to support what Shawna is saying, I was up there last Father's Day at the memorial site there, and there were some other people that had been there for a while, and they took me around, and they showed me all the fresh cut branches, and there was a lot of them, where they had set up platforms and shooting lanes. This thing had been preconceived, and, you know, it was cold-blooded, calculated murder. That's what that was.
Well, I think that's pretty obvious on that forensic film, but I do want our listeners to go to that site for themselves, to see it for themselves, because frankly, there's still going to be a lot of people that are going to poo-poo this and say, oh, it's just, you know, your perspective. Well, go to the forensic file on that, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think anybody with a rational idea of what happens in a crime scene will have a pretty good idea of just exactly how that came down.
Well, a lot of people
Shawna,
are mental cowards. A lot of people are mental cowards. A lot of people are mental cowards, and they don't want to know the truth. The very definition of Stockholm Syndrome, because when you know the truth, you got to start making decisions.
That's right. That's
right.
Sean, I wanted you to mention when you finally got out of the vehicle, because they pumped some rounds through there and the gas and everything else, what you saw with the people that were at the site that were FBI or military. They were dressed like military. They weren't properly identifying themselves, but also all the people in the trees and all the things that you saw when you actually got out of the vehicle.
Well, I've said it many times now. When I got out of the vehicle, I saw men who had stepped out from behind the trees, and they were dressed in like military uniforms with, you know, there was no name tags on the ones that I saw. As I saw them up closer, I asked them why they put me in handcuffs. If I was under arrest, they told me no, I was being detained, and they didn't know why. They told me they didn't know why. They had no name tags on. They had I mean, one of them had a hat on with the track, like a pro cam, but there was no camera on it. I asked him, "Where's your camera?" And he made light of it and never answered that. Anyway, I saw no cameras. I saw no names. I saw no police vehicles. I saw nothing that indicated that that's what they were, who they were.
Wow.
So,
well, what about the people in the surrounding? You said there were quite a few more than were identified.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it looked like like I was in a war zone. There's probably at least a dozen or more of men who had come down out of the trees and stepped out from behind them. And that was crazy. You don't see that in any video either, because this was after I shut it off.
Another important thing to bring out is that Ryan Bundy took a round in the shoulder, and it went through the top of the vehicle. It penetrated the top of his shoulder and is now lodged just above the elbow. It is a .308 caliber bullet. That is an FBI round. That's one of their sniper rounds. Oregon State Police were shooting 5.65s. That is why they have beat him up so badly in prison, trying to get that evidence and destroy that evidence. Also, you heard that there are certain FBI agents who were under indictment, and we've heard nothing about that. But they were the ones that tried to hide evidence, and they got caught hiding evidence, namely the rounds that they were firing, which were brass-colored or copper-colored, where the Oregon State Police were shooting silver. Their brass was silver. And they got caught trying to hide that evidence. So it is very obvious to me that this HRT team, I guess it is, they were out there to assassinate people. I think they tried to kill Ryan Bundy in the vehicle, and I believe very strongly that at least one of those rounds that hit Lavoy was from the FBI snipers, and I'll leave it at that. Okay,
not Lavoy. You're talking Ryan, right?
I'm saying Lavoy also. We have not seen the official what do you call it, of his body. We only got what the government put out. All right.
Right. We know he took 3 rounds in the back, and incidentally, although you weren't able to actually film this, Shawna, the FBI footage or the overhead footage shows clearly that someone from around the back of the vehicle fired a shot at Lavoy, and at that point he grabs for his chest, and that's when they shot him 3 times in the back.
I have seen that forensic, yes. The person who did it brought it to me.
He was shot with a rubber bullet, and that it hit him in the chest, and when he grabbed for his chest, which is a natural reflex, then they said, well, he was reaching for a gun. Can you, first of all, he wasn't carrying a firearm with him. Am I correct on that?
He disarmed before he left for the meeting.
That's right. And I also heard that the police investigators rifled through the Malheur facility there looking for his handgun, which he was famous for carrying, and that someone had taken it and gotten it out of the facility before they got there, and that they were looking for it so they could put it on his body. Am I correct with that too?
I believe that. I believe they were, but it was already taken.
Yes, it was not in the facility when they came looking for it, was what I was told. So, well, this is an absolutely tragic and amazing story. We're running toward the end of our program here, but I really want to thank you both for having the guts to come forward and talk about this. And I also want to mention, Shawna, do you want to mention the book that you wrote that I did not get on our billboard for this week's program, but apparently you wrote a book, The Last Rancher Standing, and you're welcome to promote that a little bit while we've got a minute.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I did write a book. It was about what happened at the Bundy Ranch, probably the precursor to this whole thing. But it was in November 2014, I put out the book because the Lord asked me to He told me to write a book. And I needed to because it testifies of all the miracles that had took place then. And it's the story of what happened. And I think that will help people understand the reasons why some of this happened now in Oregon. You can find it on Amazon probably. I haven't really promoted it a lot, but I really think we need to, because we need to get that money and start using it for the legal defenses that we set it up for, that we were able to write it for in the first place. So it's about it will just help the American people to understand the things that have been taking place and the things that are still taking place, and right. We have a responsibility to stop it.
Well, and I while we're talking about it, I want to mention the fact that Lavoy wrote a book, and I recently read that book. It's actually pretty well written, but it's called Only by Blood and Suffering, Regaining Lost Freedom, and that book is available on also on Amazon or through the family, and the proceeds of that book are being used to help support the Finicum family, and I would suggest that it would be good for our listeners to order both of these books and try to support the people that are standing up for private property in the western United States. And we're all facing the same demon here, and I've been involved with the anti-Agenda 21 movement for quite a long time, and I can tell people that sustainable development and UN Agenda 21 and 2030 are at the very heart of this attack on private property and attack on ranching families in the western U.S., because we are literally the last hope for private property in the West, and once they get rid of the ranchers and the farmers that are here and turn this whole country or the whole western part of the country into wilderness, we will no longer have the freedom, and our country will literally be mega cities with very, very many people living in a very small, confined area, and we will be living in a totally different country than anything we could have ever envisioned. So.
Thank you, Dan. Shawna, that's been my drum I've been beating the Agenda 21 drum for many years, and I am so glad that you guys are on board and that you understand that. And what a great audience.
Yeah, well, we do. We've got a very bright audience, and we've got a very, let's say, a very patriotic audience. And I think that the fact that we're trying to present the kind of information we are through guests like yourselves, it really is the sort of thing that Americans need to hear. They need to understand. We have a wonderful country. We have a lot of people in federal government that are good people. Don't take this to paint the entire picture as black, because the fact is I've got good friends in the BLM and other federal agencies that are just about as patriotic as we are. And I think that, there's a few rotten apples that have bought onto this insanity of this global governance thing and the UN Agenda 21, and they're the ones that are promoting this entire thing that is so antithetical to the U.S. Constitution and what our country was founded on. So Shawna, I want to thank you. And is there anything else you would like to say? And then I'd like to give Brand the same.
Oh, I only want to say, please keep praying for all those that are still incarcerated and for this country. The Lord, if we don't repent, we won't be able to save it. But we know that we've seen miracles, and we're going to have more miracles, and only through the faith and the repentance of American people, because it's only for moral people. So please, please continue those prayers. We need all the help we can get.
Well, thank you for that. And Brand, do you have anything you'd like to mention?
Well, I'd just like to concur with what Shawna just said. I'd also like to say, to the assassins that killed Lavoy, that was the most cowardly act. It's hard to even put it into words, but it was the most cowardly act of the blackest eye. And I will see you before the judgment bar of God. So help me God.
Well, and that's the one really marvelous thing that we have as Christians that we have to fall back on is the fact that the Lord is the one who will make the ultimate judgment. And a lot of things can happen, but as long as we do what we believe is a godly Christian thing, then we will be protected, because ultimately, even if they physically terminate our existence, they cannot do that spiritually. So,
Amen.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today for another program in Connecting the Dots. Next week, we are going to have another special program similar to the one that we had just before Thanksgiving, and we will have many of our guests, including the ones that we're on today, on for 5-minute segments on how to approach President Trump with what they believe are the most important things that our country needs to do under his new presidency. And I will welcome our guests to come on again next week to listen to that program. So with that said, I thank everyone, and I want to turn the show back over to Kelby Smith, our technical director.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude the broadcast for this week. We want to thank you so much for coming to the Connecting the Dots with Dan Happel. We'll see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific. God bless. Good night. RNN.